All right, welcome back to another installment of the 5-Star Podcast of Wrestling. I'm your host, Sean Meyers, here for the Smackdown summary. Justin Lowry and I already gave our review of WWE's latest pay-per-view, HIAC. You can check out that video now, as well as the Raw recap. But now let's talk about the Blue Brand on Tuesday with Smackdown Live. And, well, there's a lot less to review from SmackDown than Raw because the show's, an hour to an hour and 15 minutes shorter. There's still plenty of action and good pacing on this show. And it seems like almost each and every week they have a marquee match that really, I think, in the eyes of many fans, is sort of a dream match. They have so much really indie-developed talent that the hardcore fans just, are salivating over some of these possibilities. Guys like Samoa Joe, Daniel Bryan, Shinsuke Nakamura, Jeff Hardy. And then you also look at the two guys that squared off for the second time this past Tuesday on SmackDown, AJ Styles and Andrade Cien Almas. And while this, it's sort of just a match that happened without, real significance behind it, it's the second time we saw these two go at it. They had a darn good match a few months ago. Now they have their second opportunity, and it was very good again. And it's sort of curious as to why WWE is putting Andrade Cien Almas in these big-time matchups without really much of a storyline behind it. We saw him with a pair of matches against Daniel Bryan. I thought the first one was very good. I thought the second one was about average, probably disappointing for what I was looking for. This is the second time against AJ. I thought both of them have been very, very good. Not great, but it makes you want to see them wrestle on a pay-per-view where it could be great or even better than that. Andrade Cien Almas is a guy that I think has a bright future. He certainly should, and there's a lot of rumors going around that maybe he wins a Royal Rumble this upcoming year. I don't anticipate that quite yet. Maybe he wins Money in the Bank next year. I could see something like that certainly happening. But that's so far in the future, you don't know where he's going to be then, what the status of he and some of the other top superstars on SmackDown will be, or if he'll even be on SmackDown. Nonetheless, Andrade Cien Almas' stock continues to rise, but I would like to see him, instead of just being used as a quality hand, if you will, to use insider wrestling terminology, a guy who's in a storyline, in a very prominent storyline. He had a feud against Sin Cara. Not a lot came of that. And then he and Zelina were involved with the Daniel Bryan, Brie Bella, Miz and Maurice storyline. But I would really like to see Andrade do something significant long-term, maybe a 2 or 3 month feud with another guy who can really go. Whether that ultimately be AJ Styles down the road, I think it will be, but I'd like to see something before to build him up so that it's more than just two good in-ring guys going at it when he and AJ battle. It has more meaning than that. Nonetheless, AJ gets the victory. He did so in very unique fashion as he had a basically roll up into a Styles Clash. Just looked awesome. And it was, I think, the first time in WWE that AJ has done that variation to get into the Styles Clash. So I want to see more of Andrade Cien Almas against these other top stars. But with SmackDown, he's got plenty of opportunities. And, Jeff Hardy's out now. He'll be back at some point. I think him and Andrade could have a nice match or a nice feud. Rusev could be a guy down the road that I think could work with them. And then you have the heels on SmackDown, and obviously you want to keep two heels away from each other for the time being, but you have a Nakamura, you have a Samoa Joe, you have a Randy Orton. So guys like that, potentially, if things were to change down the road, they could all work with Andrade Cien Almas and potentially put together some magical moments. Nonetheless, AJ wins the match, keeps momentum going as he potentially will wrap up his feud with Samoa Joe at WWE Super Showdown in Australia. They're going to have their third match. There hasn't really been a decisive winner the first 2 times. There was a no contest or a DQ back at SummerSlam, and then at the latest HIAC match, it was sort of a controversial finish. AJ got the pinfall, but was tapping to Samoa Joe almost simultaneous to that. So they'll have one more match for sure. We'll see where they go from there. That could be the end of it if AJ retains. If he doesn't, then Samoa Joe, new champion, and then you figure it will continue beyond that because AJ would get his mandatory rematch. Something that I think was pretty notable on SmackDown, we've been waiting for the breakup between Aiden English and Rusev, and we knew it was coming at some point. I think that a lot of people thought that maybe they would wrestle SummerSlam because they first really teased this back at Extreme Rules in July in Pittsburgh. But then they tried to make them seem like they had mended fences. Aiden was doing everything he could to win over favor of Rusev and Lana, got them as a tag team. They had their tag team title match, albeit on the pre-show at HIAC. Kind of a missed opportunity there, potentially. I think a lot more eyeballs would have been on it on the main show. But miscommunication between Rusev and English cost them. They seemed like they were going to break up earlier in the night on Tuesday. Rusev said, if this is your best, it's not good enough, Aiden. We're going to have to move on. Aiden, thinking that he was by himself, kind of flipped out and ripped into them, in particular Lana. Turns out Lana heard it all. Aiden begged her not to rat him out, so he went out along with her during Rusev's match. Rusev said, I can't be distracted. I got to focus on my match against Nakamura, which was for the U.S. title, by the way. So what ends up happening is English seemingly supporting Rusev for most of the match. Maybe on accident cost him, but it turns out afterwards it was not an accident because English beat down Rusev, used a microphone to really take it to him, and then sort of taunted his former cohort and tag teammate as he stood over him with Lana and disgustingly looking on in the background. I think it was time to finally pull the trigger on this. Now, what it's going to lead to is a match between these two, potentially multiple matches. We'll see if it's sort of a short and quick finish where Rusev goes over pretty easily, or if there's a back and forth. My concern is sort of what Justin Lowry articulated a few weeks ago. This might be the end of a prominent storyline for Aiden English. If he loses cleanly and easily to Rusev in short order, do you do anything with Aiden English after that, or is it sort of the end of the road as far as his ability to be used on a weekly basis in a prominent role? Because he could be a Ty Dillinger where he basically pops up every here and there but doesn't have a set purpose on each and every edition of the show. And you hope that they don't waste a guy like this, because Aiden English, while he's I would say serviceable in the ring, I think his skills outside the ring as a legitimate artiste, to go back to his NXT persona and briefly his persona on Smackdown, that's the best way to use him. He's a guy much like Elias. And I know there's certainly similarities that jump out and people are very quick to draw those parallels. He doesn't have to wrestle to contribute to the show. He has a great voice. He can really do a lot outside of the ring, so I'd like to see him be used prominently. But I think Rusev does ultimately win this feud. However, it's good to see that they pulled the trigger. And at least for the next month or so, these guys are going to be very prominently featured in a one-on-one feud as opposed to something like a tag team. Speaking of tag teams, that's what we're seemingly going to get a lot of on the women's side in upcoming months. We know that Evolution, a little more than a month away, the first ever all-women's pay-per-view in WWE. It appears as though, rumors have it, that there will be a women's tag team title introduced that night. If that happens, we'll have to see if it's maybe one total tag team title where it spans both brands, or if each Raw and SmackDown will have their own women's tag team titles. I just don't think there's enough women's tag teams yet, but they're slowly but surely building towards that by putting Asuka and Naomi together for the time being as they go against the Iconics. We already know that Mandy and Sonya are another team on SmackDown, so really you're looking at basically 3 tag teams now on the blue brand, and then you have probably 2 or 3 or 4 on Monday Night Raw as well. So Asuka's back on TV. That's a good thing. Asuka won a match very dominantly and reminiscent of the old Asuka against Billie Kay on Tuesday. That's also a good thing, but it just seems like her and Naomi being paired together, if it doesn't end up in them breaking up and going one-on-one against each other sooner rather than later, I feel like it's just a missed opportunity and kind of a waste for both of them. Naomi's very good. Asuka's great, I would say, in terms of their in-ring ability and what they bring to the table as far as the women's landscape. You're not using them to their full potential if they're just running a tag team long-term. I think it works for a couple weeks. I would like to see ultimately Asuka turn heel on Naomi. I don't know if that's going to happen or not. More so, I think that they're just trying to build tag teams, and and really build up this potential tag team division that they will have titles for pretty soon for the women. If that's the case, and you do see an Asuka Naomi team long term, it's just another example of Asuka not living up to her great potential and somewhat being ruined by what happened between WrestleMania, losing to Charlotte and losing a pair of matches to Carmella when Carmella was the champion. Now Carmella not even on TV, or if anything, kind of mixed in a comic storyline with R-Truth. You have to wonder, was it worth ruining Asuka to give Carmella those wins? I don't think so. I never thought so. I think most fans would agree with that. But as of now, Asuka's back. She's beaten people quickly, so we'll see if they're able to salvage what's left of her mystique at this point. But it's going to be an uphill climb, especially if they keep her involved in tag team action. Just a couple other things to wrap up quickly here for the SmackDown summary. We mentioned Samoa Joe once again going against AJ Styles for the WWE title. They've also announced Daniel Bryan and The Miz will continue their feud. It'll be a one-on-one match at the Super Showdown with a stipulation added this time. The winner gets a shot at the WWE Championship. So if Samoa Joe wins the title, we figure that's going to be Daniel Bryan. If AJ retains the title, it looks like it could be The Miz. Now, how do they do this? Does this bring an end to the feud between The Miz and Daniel Bryan? If so, I would say it's sort of a disappointing way to do so. They had a good but not great match at SummerSlam that left us wanting more. They had, I would say, a mediocre at best mixed tag team match this past Sunday, and now they're going to have their third encounter in some variety over about a 6 to 8 week period upcoming. If that's truly the end, then I think that's going to be a little disappointing. I felt all along it was a WrestleMania-worthy feud. SummerSlam made sense. We'll see if they try to keep it going until WrestleMania, but we very well could see the end of it upcoming in a couple of weeks. But that stipulation is good because it makes the match all the more significant and then potentially could lead to Miz and AJ Styles, which would be good, or Daniel Bryan and Samoa Joe, which would be epic. So a lot to look forward to in the upcoming weeks on SmackDown. Also, the continuation of Becky Lynch and Charlotte. They will meet once again. Becky now the champion, Charlotte the challenger. They will have a match. Yes, if you're getting the idea that the Australian show is kind of just a continuation of all of these feuds, yes, that's pretty much what it seems like. So, especially on SmackDown, a lot of rematches upcoming. But Super Showdown, it certainly has an opportunity to have some big-time matches because a lot of these were, SummerSlam matches in their own right. So, yeah, we've seen them before, but when you have two top superstars, you hope they deliver, whether it's the first time or the 10th time that we saw it, and the audience will appreciate it. That's going to do it for the SmackDown summary. Want to, again, thank Justin Lauer for the great work that he's doing each and every week. Unfortunately, because of my difficult schedule, Justin and I are not able to get on the same page for the Raw recap and SmackDown summary. But hopefully we'll have him back next week. Fingers crossed for that one. And you can also check him out. He was part of our HIAC review that we filmed earlier this week. That's already up on our YouTube channel. Remember to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on Twitter at 5-Star Pod Wrestle. That's going to do it for another week's edition of the 5-Star Podcast of Wrestling. We'll see you next week.